Joe Biden, in one of the more surprising moves that he's done, given his role in putting these people into prison, announces an executive order for blanket amnesty for marijuana convictions as long as they're at the federal level. And there may be a kicker in there as to as long as it's just that. So we'll be talking about that, what that means, and where we go with that. And I'm pretty sure it's a vote by, and also I'm pretty sure it's going to fail. So we'll be talking about that, where we go with that, and what happens with this. In other news, more Biden news, Biden is angry. Angry Biden! Because MAGA Republicans are supposedly the ones who are striking down the DACA decision. So we'll go over that, how we started from there, what we do with this, and where we go from here. Volodymyr Zelensky outright calls for NATO to start World War III. I don't know how you interpret this video, and we'll listen to the video. I don't know how you interpret this video literally any other way, but there are people who are trying to spin this out of here, and I've read the subtitles, I've listened to the video, and I'm pretty sure that he just outright called for NATO to start this war, but we'll go over that and what happens there. And Ben Sasse, in a surprise turn of events, says that after December he will be resigning, stepping away from the Senate, paving the way for somebody new to come and take his place. It is going to be all this and more, plus live chat today. I do have the names of everybody who chatted through the week in the notebook, and we'll go over some of your chats today over here on Contemporary. We'll see you at the end of the show for that. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We have I'm going to say a wild news cycle here today. We're talking about marijuana, which is something that I've had as a pet project for a long time. We've got DACA, we've got Zelensky, and Hunter Biden, too. I added a couple stories about that right before we went live, in fact, because I saw enough people talking about that over on Twitter. I'm like, yeah, there are people that are going to want to discuss this. I don't usually want to go back and talk about the president's kids. You know, I was kind of mad about it when they did it with Eric, per se, not necessarily Don Jr. and Ivanka, because they were actually part of the administration, but Eric, I wasn't really happy about the fact that he was in on this. And Barron, I will give them some credit. Most of them stayed off of Barron, but a few of them did get on him too. But because this may actually affect the current sitting presidency, I think we are going to look into this after all. I did try to avoid it, but I think it's worth noting here. So we'll be talking about that. Finance and live chat too, by the way, over here on Contemporary. Thanks everybody who came by and checked us out here. If you like what you see here, I have got some friends to recommend to you as well, so you can get your news and culture from people who have had to make many of the same decisions you have to make on a day-to-day basis. And I am talking, of course, about great programming, such as the Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, the Porch Boys. Go check out Tweets by Brit, KTZed if you're over on Twitter. They are great accounts to follow. You can also check out the No Gimmicks podcast. That is, I believe, audio only still at this point. Mr. Behavior doing some gaming stuff, stepping out of the political fray while he's still in school, but still looking into some things like that. And PJ Patriot coming in and bringing us all news and culture from the common man for the common man. Important things to do with that. So we will see what happens with that. Go check all of them out. I highly recommend a personal recommendation for all of them. And let's get started. All right, looking in at the Dow. The Dow tumbled yesterday. Previous close at 30,273.87. Yesterday's close 29,926.94. That is a fall of. That's not good. I know it reset all the numbers up here, up top here, but that's 250 points throughout the day yesterday. Because there's a lot of things that people are digesting, and it does look like the joblessness is starting to come up and people are starting to come off. I don't know what's going to happen here. Now, it does look like the available jobs, the jobs report, is going to go down. And we can probably go over and check that out here after we get into the finance, because that's going to be the one on deck, is what the jobs report looks like. Because on a false mirage of what the economy is doing, because of the interest rates and because that will supposedly curb inflation, the investors are probably going to go nuts if the jobs report actually starts going down, because they say that means the labor market's cooling off, and that means it'll be safe to invest again. So I'm kind of curious to see where we go from this and what happens here, but we will watch this and look and see what IBD has to say. On your Bitcoin, let's get a refresh off this because this is more active. Ooh, and I'm glad that I did, because Bitcoin was at 20,020 and 70 cents, and then it just fell off a cliff just a few moments ago, now to 19,617.50. So it looks like right now, live, there are a bunch of people that are selling off their Bitcoin. So I'm going to actually save this tab today, and we will see what happens with this later on through the day. Because, yeah, that's a pretty significant drop in a fairly short order. Your gas prices around the Madison area. It looks like there's actually been some mixing and some changes throughout everything. We've got the Quick Trip on the far west side that has brought itself down to 389. That was at 420 yesterday. The Exxon was at 4. The Amoco on the Isthmus remains at 396, and the Quick Trip on the east side is at 389. It looks like the Quick Trip down here has come up, however, to 410. The north side Quick Trip is at 410, and the BP that was also at 4 yesterday is also at 410. So some places are going up and some places are going down in the Madison area. Your gas prices may vary. This is a highly localized math, but it does give an idea as to which direction the gas prices are going versus looking at the AAA national average, taking into account some places that go up and some places that go down. So that is what we see coming off of this. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. Do I not have D-Live today? Let's go have a look. Alright. Let's see what's going on over here, because yes, it does not appear. Looks like D-Live itself is having issues. I have an alert up here. If your channel has been stuck online, please ignore the automated "Your D-Live channel has been restricted" email. That's interesting. Let me see what is happening on my monitor. D-Live is stuck in a sending data loop on my monitor, so let me kick that off and kick that back on and see if it does anything. Huh. That would be lame if we don't have D-Live, but hey, we've got a bunch of other platforms you can go check me out on, so yeah, there's no D-Live this morning. That's lame, because I like D-Live. Alright, let's see what IBD has to say, because we do have to stick with it and get to what we're getting to here. Dow futures rise out of key jobs report. AMD stock tumbles on revenue warning. From Scott Latonin. Dow futures rose Friday morning ahead of the Labor Department's September payrolls report. Advanced Micro Devices triggered an early sell-off among chip stocks, issuing weaker than expected preliminary third quarter revenue results late on Thursday. AMD warned that the weakness was a combination of weaker than expected PC market and significant involuntary correction actions across the PC supply chain. Meanwhile, Taiwan Semiconductor reported higher than expected quarterly revenue, but shares were still down about 2.5%. September's jobs report is due out ahead of Friday's open at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. The U.S. economy is expected to grow by 250,000 jobs in September, down from August's 315,000 increase per Econoday estimates. The unemployment rate is expected to remain unchanged at 3.7. The market could read a soft jobs report as a positive, with weaker job growth possibly easing the Fed's stance on aggressive rate hikes. Let's see what the jobs report looks like. Well, they did better than they were expecting. 263,000 is the final number for September, which again still surprised me. Air Test Systems countered with early chip sector action. It beat Wall Street's estimates for its fiscal first quarter and kept its robust growth targets for the full year. Shares surged more than 10% in pre-market trade. Lyft slid down more than 1% after RBC downgraded the stock from outperform to sector perform with a price target of 16 and down from 30. Twitter declined 1% Friday morning as a judge ruled that Elon must complete his $44 billion Twitter deal by October 28th or else face a November trial. Tesla traded 0.5% higher on Friday. Among the Dow Industrials, tech titans Apple and Microsoft were both modestly lower ahead of today's stock market open. As the market continues to wait for a trend change, Cummins, Murphy USA, Neurocrine Biosciences, Vertex Pharmaceuticals, and WWE, as well as Dow stock United Health, are among the top stocks to watch. It still blows my mind, by the way, that the WWE is the stock to watch. That blows me away. I am so surprised with that. Amid this week's volatility, the market remains in correction and investors should remain on the defense. Vertex is a recent addition to the IBD leaderboard. Cummins is an IBD swing trader stock. Murphy USA was featured in this week's Stocks Nearby Zone column, along with the three other top stock ideas. WWE was a stock of the day on September 29th. Neurocrine was a stock of the day on September 26th. On the futures, Dow rose 0.3, the S&P and the NASDAQ. The S&P came up 0.1, and the NASDAQ fell 0.15, with AMD, Nvidia, Intel, and ASML, not ASMR, leading the declines. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate to actual trading in the next regular stock market session. Among the ETFs, the NASDAQ Invesco QQQ Trust was down 0.2, and the SPDR S&P 500 rose by 0.1. The 10-year yield ticked higher to 3.83. The 10-year yield fell as low as 3.56 this week before rebounding. Last week, the 10-year yield briefly topped 4%, which hasn't been done for more than a decade. Meanwhile, oil prices continued this week's rebound, rising more than 1% on Friday. West Texas Intermediate futures climbed near $90 a barrel last week. Oil fell to its lowest level of the year, around $76 a barrel, before rebounding, and before we got into a situation where, I don't know if it's happening where you are, but where I am, we had our first frost advisory last night. So it is time for us to go back and start thinking about what's going to happen with fuel oil, heating oil, and fuel itself. So that's what we see coming off of that. I've got just a couple more on finance to see what we have going off here. From just the news, under Biden, Americans see most severe pay cut in 25 years due to inflation. Yeah, I can see that. Just looking around and seeing what I have going on in my life. From Casey Harper, Americans are experiencing the biggest pay cut in decades, in large part due to inflation, new data shows. The Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, one of several regional Fed banks across the country, released a new wage and price data, and it isn't good news for Americans. We find that a majority of employed workers, real inflation-adjusted wages, have failed to keep up with inflation in the past year, the bank said. For these workers, the median decline in real wages has a little more than 8.5%. Taken together, these outcomes appear to be the most severe faced by employed workers over the past 25 years. The Fed Bank reported that more than half of Americans saw a decrease in wages in the last 12 months. How severe are those losses for workers experiencing negative real wage growth? The group said. For the 53.4% of such workers in the second quarter of 2022, the median decline, that is half the declines that were larger and half smaller, in real wage growth was 8.6%. That actually sounds just about right, because there were a lot of companies that couldn't afford to give a raise. And that's about what inflation was. Mine was not as severe, because I did get a 5% raise. But looking over the fact that, number one, I didn't get a raise the year before, so my wage actually went down, probably with 5% raise. Let's do a little bit of mental math. 11.2 year over year. But is continuing to decline at this point. How does the severity of the real wage decline in the second quarter of 2022 compare with the declines over the past 25 years? The average median decline over the last 25 years is 6.5%, with the real wage declines typically falling in the range of 5.7 to 6.8%. The bank pointed to the CPI, which since President Biden took office has elevated the highest rate in 4 decades. The BLS, latest consumer price index, surpassed 8% in the previous 12 months. So there you go. Your pay went down. Reading one from Market Watch. In congruence with what we just saw off the jobs market, jobless claims jump up to a 5-week high of 219,000, sign of rising U.S. layoffs. From Jeffrey Bartash. It probably is, but also because we're only adding 263,000 jobs, they don't have the jobs to replace these 219,000 jobs where we're starting to see layoffs in. But let's see what Jeffrey Bartash has to say. The number of people who applied for unemployment benefits last week jumped by 29,000 to a 5-week high of 219,000, possibly a sign of rising layoffs as the U.S. economy slows and business scale back employment. Economists polled by the Wall Street Journal have forecast new claims that to a total of 203,000 in the 7 days ended October 1st. The figures are seasonally adjusted. The number of people applying for jobless benefits is one of the best barometers of whether the economy is getting better or worse. One caveat, raw or actual unemployment filings are still near a historic low. The government's process for seasonal adjustments has exaggerated the increase in new claims repeatedly since the spring. The economy is slowing as the Federal Reserve jacks up interest rates to try to extinguish the highest inflation in 40 years. But yet, we don't stop the spending. The Fed's strategy might already be taking effect, though still quite low. Layoffs rose by one measure to an 18-month high, and some large companies such as GE, Facebook, and The Gap have either announced layoffs or reportedly plan to do so. The Fed predicts the jobless rate will climb to 4.4 by the end of 2023 from the current level of 3.7. The government will release the latest unemployment rate on Friday's September employment report. Of the 53 states and U.S. territories that report jobless claims, 30 showed an increase, and 23 recorded a decline. Most of the new claims are concentrated in a handful of places, such as Puerto Rico, Missouri, Mass. The jump in claims of Puerto Rico came after another hurricane devastated the island. Yeah, Puerto Rico is understandable. The number of people already collecting unemployment benefits, meanwhile, rose by 15,000 to 1.36 million. They remain near a 50-year low, however. Well, again, we have continuing. Don't last forever. At some point, you have to go back onto a chronic situation. where you get government benefits for it. Dude, we gotta figure out what's going on with this internet thing. Because it just does that randomly. It pops in and it gives me the little globe down in the corner, and then we cut off for a second or two, and then we're back on. Now again, I remind you, it's better than what happened with the laptop, because when that happened, the processor went nuts and everything spiked, and we actually shut down the stream. But still, you guys mostly just see a buffering wheel. You probably don't even know that it's happening. You maybe even think it's on your end, but it's definitely on mine. Alright, let's grab one more here from the housing market side of things. And then we get to go talk about the marijuana side. From Yahoo Finance. Excuse me. Housing brought to its knees by the Federal Reserve, expert says. From Danny Romero. Mortgage applications on Wednesday became the latest sign showing how hard rates are hitting housing, and it could get worse. The volume of mortgage applications for purchases dropped 13% last week compared with the previous week, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association. While refinance activity, a measure most sensitive to weekly interest rates, plunged 18%. Purchase apps were down 37% year over year. Refis were 86% lower. Well, yeah, I don't really see or understand a point where you can come out to a better situation on a refi right now. The U.S. housing market is being brought to its knees by the Federal Reserve, said George Pierce, a macro strategist at Bespoke Investments, who estimates a fall of at least 10% more. From here is probably something that we can expect to see in mortgage applications, although these processes take time. Typically, when you see a 12% drop in mortgage apps, you assume seasonality. I don't think that's the case here. Truly brutal. We have a genuine shot at the lowest purchase app since 1994. A similar sentiment came from Sam Hall, property economist at Capital Economics. So far, credit conditions have loosened only gradually, even as demand has plummeted. It therefore seems unlikely that mortgage applications will rebound in the coming months. Hall said, if anything, we think there is room for them to edge down a little bit lower. Over the last 7 weeks, the 30-year fixed has increased 1.3 points, more than double versus last year. Adding further headwinds to the buying, the rate jumped to 6.7% last week from 6.29% the previous week, according to Freddie Mac, its highest level since July of 2007. So, there's a lot of stuff to watch with. There's a lot of stuff to pay attention to, and I'm not really sure how this is going to affect every other market. But I can tell you, it's probably not going to be good. So we'll continue to watch this and see what happens here. Let's talk weed. With Politico. To start off, Biden pardons marijuana offenses, calls for review of federal law. Now, on paper, I'm actually quite in support with the first side of this. The second side, I have some questions about it. As far as pardoning the marijuana offenses, I've said that's probably going to be a good thing, but a blanket pardon I don't think works. A review of the federal law? Absolutely. There's no reason that weed should be Schedule 1. With so many states that are refusing to enforce federal law, and that have legalized recreational use in their states, so basically as long as you don't cross state lines with it, you're good. A definite review of the federal law is necessary, but just blanket pardon? Let's talk a bit about that. From Eugene Daniels and Natalie Fertig. President Biden on Thursday granted a pardon to all people convicted of simple marijuana possession under federal law, in what amounts to be the most extensive White House action taken to date on U.S. drug policy. The president also urged governors to take similar action for state offenses of civil possession. In addition, he called the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Attorney General to expeditiously review how marijuana is scheduled under federal law. Currently, marijuana is classified as a Schedule 1 narcotic, meaning it's deemed to have no medical use and a high potential for abuse. Heroin and LSD are other Schedule 1 drugs. Sending people to prison for possessing marijuana has upended too many lives. Oh, the irony, Mr. Biden, and you particularly saying that. And incarcerated people for conduct that many states no longer prohibit, Biden said in a statement. Criminal records for marijuana possession have also imposed needless barriers to unemployment, housing, and educational opportunities. And while white and black and brown people use marijuana at similar rates, black and brown people have been arrested and prosecuted, convicted at disproportionate rates. And see, that right there, that in and of itself tells me that this was a vote by. The president added that regulations that limit trafficking, marketing, and sales to minors shouldn't change, but that states should follow the admin's lead because the vast majority of people incarcerated for marijuana in the U.S. are convicted under state or local laws. The president has been clear that marijuana laws are not working, said a senior admin official. The president has been considering his options, and he's now taking executive actions. The move, pushed for by advocates for months, brings marijuana policy to the fore just weeks before the midterm election. Translation: vote by. Underscoring just how much the politics of the issue have changed in a short period of time. Polling consistently shows that roughly 2/3 of Americans support marijuana legalization. No, I support full decriminalization. But despite the popularity of legalization, fewer than 1 in 5 2022 primary candidates mention cannabis reform on their website or social media, according to an analysis by the Brookings Institution. The practical impact, at least immediately, may be limited. Most people in federal prison for cannabis offenses are not in prison for minor, nonviolent offenses, so the number of individuals affected by this order will be in the thousands, according to the White House. I believe the red-headed libertarian, not my former co-host, the one who has the official handle, TRHL official, said it was something like 6,500 people total across the U.S. The move, nevertheless, is remarkable for Biden, a 79-year-old president who had written some of the tough-on-crime drug laws that advocates note led to the current incarceration rates. Biden was the only Democratic presidential candidate in 2020 who did not support federal descheduling, which would essentially make marijuana legal at the federal level. The admin had also said Biden wants to reschedule cannabis to Schedule 2, which would make it easier to study, legalize medical marijuana, and decriminalize minor possession. All these positions legally conflicted with each other. Well, that's because he made it up as he went, to try to appease to everybody at the same time. Currently, 37 states and D.C. have legalized medical, and 19 have legal adult use marijuana. 5 states are voting on recreational in 2022 midterms: Missouri, Arkansas, North and South Dakota, and Maryland. Earlier this year, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer introduced a bill to deschedule cannabis and expunge some federal records. However, that bill does not currently have the votes in the Senate to pass. The House has twice passed legislation in recent years that would eliminate federal marijuana penalties, but with little Republican support. In addition, a House bill introduced by Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez and Dave Joyce would set aside grant funding for states that want to expunge cannabis-related records. So, let's talk about this. First off, the timing. This is, just like student loan forgiveness, been one of the pet projects that the Progressive Caucus, and a lot of Republicans too, by the way, before I actually go into the statistics onto some of this stuff, let's go back and look at the culture side of this. Because it seems like there is a lot of bipartisan support to go and eliminate this. to make this legal again. I support this, by the way. Now, with a commercial driver's license, I will not be partaking because federal agencies are still going to have their own rules on this outside of what's legal and what's not. And it's going to be the same thing with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They may have to change how they do things, and you probably won't go to jail if you get to it, but there's still a possibility that if you get hurt at work and you get caught with weed in your system, especially with a stubborn one like weed, that stays in your system for a long time, that you're still going to lose your job. But those are individual and private company aspects of things, and there's still going to be private companies that are going to come out and say, hey, I don't want no stoner coming in and working here for me. So with that being said, there's still a lot of bipartisan support for the descheduling, decriminalization, or at least legalization. Even a lot of neocon, I cite my neocon cousin a lot on this program, and even a lot of them will come out and say, you know, I think we should go ahead and legalize that and then have the federal government take it over and tax the crap out of it. I didn't quote my cousin directly because, well, you know, we're trying to go and cater to the AM radio crowd. And by the way, this is a person who calls for smaller government in the same breath when he does that. But yeah, I mean, even among the churchy, Jesus type Republicans who think that their purity means that they're going to get into heaven, they still think that this should be something that we could use for a tax revenue to try to pay down the debt. So, there are a few things that work with that happen with that. As far as this goes, number one, this is a vote by. You're less than a month away from midterms. The student loan forgiveness thing seems to have failed. It's going to be dead in the water. Basically, they were trying to push this back after the midterms to go back and get this to come back out. Or so they don't have to pay for it, essentially. So they can say evil Republican judges and evil Republicans in Congress blocked this. That was the strategy for that. DACA seems to be on life support at this point. It actually might be completely over, but they're still allowing the current recipients to work with that. So that's going on. So right now, and Zelensky just called for World War III. So right now we need something to distract from the fact that all three of those things, which are negative for the administration, are happening currently. So what do? Throw to legalize it. Now the statistics, or who this is going to affect. The question as to whether or not this affects the midterms is huge, because a lot of people think that, I mean, especially a lot of progressives, because they've been told by their think tanks that, well, look at all these black people that are in prison right now, and all they had is a simple possession, which is not the case in any stretch of the imagination, unfortunately. There were a lot of mitigating factors for this. The red-headed libertarian, as I mentioned before, mentioned that there are 6,500 people in federal prison for simple possession. But I question, and I'd love to look and see the statistics on this, if somebody else can grab some of the statistics that go with this. How many of those are only for simple possession? And how many of those are for simple possession tacked on as an aggravating factor for another crime? Or how many, and I'd really question, how many are simple possession that were pled down from possession with intent to distribute? Hey, yeah, you go take a year, we'll put you up for a year, but we won't put you up for 10 years because you went to go try to sell to an elementary school or something like that. Things like that. I don't think this is going to affect very many people, and the vast majority of people who are in prison for this are in prison on state level charges. which are not affected by any of this. Biden can't pardon anybody on a state level. Remember, that is one of the reasons, too, by the way, that the state of New York is trying to desperately to get Trump on a state-level charge, because they know that DeSantis or Rand Paul or something can't come back and pardon him after the fact. So there are a lot of things moving. This does not have the impact that a lot of people think that it does, except for the fact that they can come back out and propagandize and vote by with it. An interesting thought experiment was brought up, though, with this here, Jess A. Patriot, who is a good follower on Twitter. If you guys don't, he's got 3,729 follows, and he follows yours truly. He's got a decent take on this here. Not something I necessarily agree with, and I said that. I disagree with you strongly, but I'm going to feature on the morning show because it's an interesting line of thought, regardless of if I agree. Jess A. Patriot says, the problem with releasing people of weed is that many of them were violent felons, but lazy prosecutors only sought weed charges because they were easy to prove/plead down. Releasing nonviolent may result in lots of violence, which is also a possibility. I agree with pardoning anybody who has only a weed conviction. I agree with that fully. But a blanket situation, I don't agree with that. I do think that this is something that needs to be brought in front of a judge. I mean, this is a lengthy process to do, the way you do it right. Whereas Biden can just, hey, I flicked a pen and anybody who has simple weed possession is out of prison. And he can get this done right before the midterms. Like, the way that this should be done properly would take a good 2 years. Especially with COVID restrictions still on government buildings, meaning that a lot of these people would actually still probably be sitting out there, okay, yep, we can only have this many people in the courtroom at once, and, transport and this and everything else. But to have a team of federal judges review every case and see who is there for simple possession, what the original cases were, what the original arrests were, because, again, there's the possibility that, a prosecutor comes out and says, okay, well, weed is easy to prove, just like Jess said. And one of the other things that was brought up in this particular thread is that there's the hardening effect that prison has as well, which means you put Harold the Happy Hippie in for simple weed possession, if that's all that he had was his simple weed possession. You put Harold the Happy Hippie in, and the next thing you know, the people who are protecting him from getting his butt kicked by all the Black Panthers that are in prison are the Aryan Brotherhood, and the next thing you know, he comes back out with a bunch of face tattoos and swastikas all up and down his arms. Which again, I believe is going to be a mitigating factor, or should be a mitigating factor, in letting some of these people out of prison. So, I don't think blanket was the way to go. But I do agree with getting some of these people out of prison for this. An analysis from CNN, which is an op-ed from CNN from Stephen Collinson. Biden's marijuana move could change lives and impact the midterms. And really, there it is. In granting pardons for federal marijuana possession convictions, President Biden is taking a historic step that's likely to be widely popular and could energize core Democratic constituencies just over a month before the midterm elections. It would change the lives of thousands of Americans convicted of marijuana possession, especially if governors follow the president's lead. But it also risks playing into searing Republican attacks branding Democrats as soft on crime, which are rocking multiple key contests ahead of the elections that could hand control of the Senate and the House of Representatives to the GOP. The president's move is limited for now, as he does not go as far as legalizing the drug. That's the other side of that too. By the way, and I pointed that out on Twitter a few times yesterday, that, yeah, he could go and let all 6,500 of these people out of prison, but It's still Schedule 1, and this is still 3 strikes Biden, which means that it's probably not going to be too hard to get 6,500 prison slots filled back up, especially in our country's prison industrial complex. An issue who's central to some campaigns this fall, including John Fetterman. Specifically, the president will take executive action to pardon all prior federal offenses of simple marijuana possession. He also has directed the Justice Department to review how the drug is categorized in federal law. It's currently scheduled on the same level as LSD, heroin, and fentanyl, and meth. White House officials said there were 6,500 people convicted of simple possession of weed under federal law between 1992 and 2021. Thousands more faced state conviction. So between 1992 and 2021, that's almost 30 years. How many of these people are even still in prison? That's actually going to be my next question, because I can't imagine that a simple possession carries more than 5 years. I don't know. I've never been busted for simple possession, but I can't imagine, unless you're, again, intent to distribute, that carries more than 5 years. So how many people are actually in prison for this? Yeah, that's another question, because Randy brings up the important point that Kamala was the one who liked to use these simple possession charges to put people in state prison to allow them to be workers during the wildfires. No one should be in jail for just using or possessing marijuana, Biden said in a video, which is ironic because of his tough on crime 1994 crime bill. It's legal in many states, and criminal records for marijuana possession have led to needless barriers to employment, housing, and educational opportunities. And that's before you address the racial disparities around who suffers the consequences, man. Officials in any admin often balk at the suggestion their moves are purely motivated by politics, except for the fact that this one clearly is, given the statistics. But Biden's decision on this issue represents a campaign promise fulfilled, and it's being rolled out just weeks before a midterm election. So it's hard not to see this as a highly political move. Biden's action will, for instance, please civil rights and criminal justice reform advocates, since Black Americans, a key Democratic Party demographic, are more than 3 times as likely to be arrested for marijuana possession, according to the ACLU. Well, we'll take that statistic with a grain of salt. And as with his plan to cancel up to $20,000 in federal student loan debt, Thursday's decision looks to like an attempt to enthuse younger voters who are increasingly open to recreational use and who are notoriously hard to drive to the polls, especially in midterm elections. Democratic hopes of fending off a Republican red wave in November have been boosted by an increased base enthusiasm following the Supreme Court's abortion decision, a trend that Biden's marijuana pardons could extend. Still, 2 new CNN polls in Arizona and Nevada, 2 crucial Senate battlegrounds, show that the economy and inflation remain the most important issues to voters and pose a strong threat to Democratic candidates, given their monopoly on political power in Washington. So, yeah, this is a pure political move. Pure. But that's what we have for that. On the other side of this, another thing they might be trying to distract from here, from CNBC, federal agents think they have enough evidence to charge Hunter Biden with tax and gun buy crimes, report says. From Dan Mangan. Federal agents believe they have enough evidence to support charging Hunter Biden, the son of President Joe Biden, with tax crimes and making a false statement in connection with the purchase of a gun, the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness, reported on Thursday. It is now up to U.S. Attorney for Delaware David Weiss, an appointee of former President Trump, to decide whether to prosecute Hunter on these charges, noted the Post, which cited people familiar with the investigation. No sources, but people familiar with the investigation. A newspaper reported that federal agents determined months ago that they had assembled a viable criminal case against the younger Biden. In a statement to NBC News, Chris Clark, Hunter Biden's lawyer, said, "It's a federal felony for a federal agent to leak information about a grand jury investigation such as this one. Any agent you cite as a source in your article apparently has committed such a felony. We expect the Department of Justice will diligently investigate and prosecute such bad actors. As is proper and legally required, we believe that prosecutors in this case are diligently and thoroughly weighing not just evidence provided by agents, but also all the other witnesses in the case, including witnesses for the defense," Clark said. "That is the job of the prosecutors. They should not be pressured, rushed, or criticized for doing their job." And that, by the way, is also a situation that we could be in. A temptation to go back and get some people out there to try to put a pressure campaign on this, because then you can come back and say, "Evil MAGA bad!" But the first assumption you have to make is whether or not somebody is actually going to bring a charge forward. Remembering who is in charge of the DOJ. So, well, we'll see. I know I saw one tweet earlier that said, wouldn't it be funny if Hunter Biden went to prison before Donald Trump? Well, I don't think he is going to prison. So, that's what we have for that. Let's talk about DACA. One of my little pet projects. One of the things that I hate the most about the way our government is currently set up. From ABC 7 Eyewitness News, decades after seeking a pathway to U.S. citizenship, the future of DACA recipients continues in limbo. From Jessica De Nova. After decades of fighting to protect immigrants brought to the U.S. as young children from deportation, the battle continues with many of those affected well into adulthood. Sergio Hernandez reflected on his experience Thursday as a recipient of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program known as DACA. "I started reflecting and thinking about the fact that I've had 5 permits in 10 years, and next year I would like to renew my permit, and the decision at the end of the month could make a lot of things unknown for me once again," Hernandez said. Without a permanent pathway to citizenship in the U.S., a lifetime of unknowns is a reality for Hernandez, and estimated that more than 600,000 people enrolled in the DACA program. When created by the Obama admin, DACA allowed those eligible to apply for renewable 2-year permits, Social Security cards, and driver's licenses. "When I received DACA, it saved me because I was in a very dark place," said Hernandez, who hit several roadblocks he couldn't control after graduating from Cal Poly Pomona. Hernandez was brought to the U.S. when he was 2 years old. He always gave life his all, graduating at the top of his class. Still, his undocumented status got in the way, Hernandez said. "DACA saved his life. It gave me hope and an opportunity to believe that there was still an opportunity for that young boy that found that he was in 6th grade, that he was undocumented, and that he had an opportunity to continue to dream and aspire and do what his parents wanted him to do and achieve, which was the American dream," he said. Hernandez received his master's in higher education student affairs. His latest job was with City Year Incorporated, helping to fundraise for programs providing Los Angeles Unified School District students with mentors. Ultimately, Hernandez planned to get his doctorate degree, but after several federal court challenges this past Wednesday, the fate of the program was put back in the hands of U.S. District Judge Andrew Hannon of Texas, who last year declared DACA illegal. "As much as I want to be positive about the decision, it's been something that we've known the fate of DACA for many years because Congress hasn't done anything to make it better and create something that's not going to be bouncing back and forth," Hernandez said. Hannon was set to review President Biden's version of DACA from this past August, which was scheduled to go into effect at the end of October. The Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. I stand in a different place than most of my more right-leaning friends on this, and I'm going to come right out and say that. If these people, especially if they've been in the program, have been in the program for this many years. They are very, very well documented. I don't know why I understand why we still say they're undocumented immigrants, but they're actually very well documented. But this has been a sticking point. This has been one of the things that's made me the angriest about the way the Obama admin did things from the beginning. You put these people, and there's a reason that Eyewitness News is bringing Mr. Hernandez, who's a master's degree recipient, going for his doctorate. There's a reason they put him forward. I'm not stupid. I understand why you're doing this. If it was me in this situation, I had taken over the presidency and I had a Congress that would work with me, and I'm in this situation, the very first thing that I would do is I would say, okay, we're not enforcing this. Now the next thing you do is you need to bring me a law that takes the DACA program documentation that they all have to apply for, their permits, and turns them into an actual green card, a resident visa, so that these people, because if they're in the program, we have their names, social security numbers, etc., can start going down the path to citizenship. Also, let's give me an appointment for maybe 100 more federal judges so we can get these people in front of these judges and expedite the process, because some of them are like Hernandez, good, productive members of society. I don't believe in a blanket amnesty, just like I don't believe in a blanket pardon for all the marijuana convictions. I believe that all these people should have to go and make their cases in front of a judge and say, hey, I've been here illegally, but this is what I've accomplished while I'm here. I have no criminal record. Let's see what we can do. And a federal judge decides. But, I mean, at this point, the other side of the coin with this is this has got to be psychologically damaging to these people to not know year over year. And that's the way the DACA was designed. This is one of the most cruel things that the Obama admin ever put out, because it was designed so these people wouldn't know year over year whether or not they'd be legal or illegal, and they're neither. I know a lot of my right-wing friends will come out and say that they're automatically illegal. Well, by the DACA program, they're actually in a state of immigration limbo, which means that they're Schrodinger's immigrants. They are neither legal nor illegal. As long as you don't open up the box, they are neither and both at the same time. But at this point, it would be even, and my friends on the left would actually ostracize me for saying it this way, it would be more compassionate to deport everybody in the DACA program than just to sit there and let them languish year over year, month over month. Am I legal? Am I illegal? Can I go to work tomorrow? Will I be deported if I go to work tomorrow? It would be more compassionate to kick them out over the border than to make them go through that every single year. I've had a lot of problems with the Obama presidency. This is one of the big ones. One of the big ones. So, that's how I look at this thing. Put them in front of a judge, let them make their case. If the judge can't be convinced, over the fence you go. But just stop the, am I legal or am I illegal? That was, excuse my language for those of you listening on that I've stolen from the AM radio audience, but that is pure ass bullshit. That you set up a program where people don't know, and called it compassionate on top of it. I have thoughts on DACA. That was one of the ones that, yeah, you guys probably know that at this point. From CNN, Federal Appeals Court rules 2012 DACA memo unlawful and sends the case back to consider Biden admin version. From Priscilla Alvarez. A federal appeals court largely upheld a district court ruling finding the Obama-era Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program is unlawful, but sent the case back to a lower court to decide the legality of a new rule fortifying the program. DACA, created in 2012, was intended to provide a temporary reprieve to undocumented immigrants, again, put them in immigration limbo, so that every couple of years, well, you have to vote for Democrats in this election or this election because otherwise these poor people, they're going to get deported back to a country they don't know. They've never been in. They don't even speak the language. There's your temporary reprieve right there. Were brought to the U.S. as children, a group often described as dreamers. Many of them are now adults. Yeah, many of them are my age. Actually, I think the age restriction goes to a couple years older than me. I think 82 was the birth year for the cutoff, and I was born in 84, which meant that 40-year-olds are in this program. There are more than 611,000 immigrants enrolled in the program, according to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Wednesday's ruling will not affect those currently in the program, but it will continue to block new applications. From what I understand about the way that the program was written and designed, it's so the fact that the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals documents cannot serve as immigration documentation, so they can't go through, if they're in the DACA program, and get their green card, and they can't go through the naturalization process, if I understand the way this was explained to me correctly. So they were designed to stay in the program forever. Yeah, the welfare aspect of it, I actually do believe that that's one of the things that should be brought forward when they do their immigration hearings. Are you going to be a net positive society, or are you going to be on welfare for the rest of your life if we give you this? Have you been on welfare before? Oh, you have? You know, you've been on it long term? Over the fence you go. Get the catapult. Judge Hannon of the Southern District of Texas ruled in 2021 that DACA was unlawful and blocked the government from approving new applications for the program. Hannon's order, however, allowed the program to continue for current enrollees while the case is litigated. The appeals court preserved the stay in its ruling on Wednesday. We also recognize that DACA has had profound significance to recipients and many others in the 10 years since its adoption. Given the uncertainty of the final disposition and the inevitable disruption that would arise from a lack of continuity and stability, we preserve the stay as to existing recipients, the ruling reads. The Biden admin released a rule in August to preserve and fortify the DACA program, largely maintaining the criteria for the program. The federal appeals court acknowledged the new regulation in its ruling, saying the lower court should consider it. A district court is the best position to review the admin record in the rulemaking proceedings and determine whether our holdings as to the 2012 DACA memorandum fully resolve the issues concerning the final rule, the ruling states. So, it's back through the court system. We'll see what happens with this and whether or not we get the trebuchets. Yeah, got a felony record? Actually, I don't think you qualify for the DACA program under the felony record. So, if you've got a felony record, you're supposedly, the way it was explained to me, they're already preparing your trebuchet. Over the wall. From the Post-Millennial, Biden fumes at MAGA Republicans as court strikes down DACA. President Biden released a statement that was not written by him, but written by one of his staffers and signed by him, expressing his outrage not only at the decision, but MAGA Republicans who suggested they were to blame for enabling it. From Jared Yeager. On Wednesday, the Fifth Circuit ruled that DACA was illegal and sent the case back to a lower court. Following the ruling, Biden released a statement expressing his outrage not only at the outcome, but MAGA Republicans who he suggested were to blame for enabling it. The program, often called the Dreamers Act, is meant to offer amnesty to those children of illegal immigrants who were brought to the U.S. by their parents by illegal border crossing. I'm disappointed in today's Fifth Circuit decision, holding that DACA is unlawful, Biden wrote. The court stay provides a temporary reprieve for DACA recipients, but one thing remains clear. The lives of dreamers remain in limbo. Well, your former employer is the one who's at fault for that, because he is the one that put them in limbo. He went on to suggest the decision was the result of continued efforts by Republican state officials to strip DACA recipients of their protections and work authorizations that many have now held for over a decade, and called on Congress to pass permanent protections for dreamers, including a pathway to citizenship. Well, you've had 2 years, but I knew right from the beginning of those 2 years that they weren't going to do it. I saw this coming. Biden continued by decrying the challenge to DACA as just another example of extreme agenda being pushed by MAGA Republican officials. According to Reuters, in 2021, U.S. District Judge Andrew Hannon ruled that DACA, created by former President Obama in 2012, violated the Admin Procedure Act, but assured that it didn't call for any immigration, deportation, or criminal action against any DACA recipient. The Biden admin appealed the decision, sending it to a conservative 3-judge panel at the Fifth Circuit. They agreed with Hannon's decision, but ordered that it be sent back to a lower court. A district court, the group of Republican-appointed judges wrote, is the best position to review the admin record in the rulemaking proceeding and determine whether our holdings as to the 2012 DACA memorandum fully resolve issues concerning the final rule. There isn't a solution in the final rule, is there? As Fox News reports, per the court's decision, current DACA recipients will still be allowed to continue renewing their status. However, the approval of all the new applications will remain halted. Other members of the Biden admin have expressed their displeasure with the ruling, including the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. So, yeah, they're not happy about this. I think this is just a review, but yeah, they use different language from the Post-Millennial. Post-Millennial said, Biden fumes. Fox News says, Biden scolds. Let's talk about overseas. From the Hill. Biden warns of Armageddon amid Putin nuclear threats. From Brett Samuels. President Biden on Thursday said that Russian... Excuse me. I hate allergy season. I had a 15 sneezing fit right before the camera went on, by the way, today. So my throat's a little bit raw right now. President Biden on Thursday said that Russian President Vladimir Putin was not joking in his references to using nuclear weapons. I still have yet to hear President Putin say nuclear weapons. Warning that the world was facing its greatest nuclear threat since the Cuban Missile Crisis. In fact, the only people I've heard threaten nuclear weapons have been Zelensky and the United States, and say the words nuclear weapons. We have not faced the prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis, Biden said at a fundraiser in New York City, citing the '62 standoff with the Soviet Union. We've got a guy I know fairly well, Biden continued. referencing Putin. He's not joking when he talks about the potential use of tactical nuclear weapons or biological or chemical weapons. Because his military is, you might say, significantly underperforming. Biden, who was speaking at the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee fundraiser at the home of James Murdoch, expressed skepticism that there was any way for Putin and Russia to use a smaller tactical nuclear weapon without it leading to Armageddon. I'm trying to figure out what's Putin's off-ramp. Where does he find a way out? Biden said. Where does he find himself in a position that he does not only lose face but lose significant power within Russia? Man, come on. According to the video that's playing out in the corner, California is banning new gas stoves. If you'd like to see where the progressive policy goes. Biden's comments are some of the starkest yet from U.S. officials about the threat of Russia using nuclear weapons and dramatically escalating its war in Ukraine. In a speech last month announcing the mobilization of hundreds of thousands of troops to fight in Ukraine, Putin said Moscow was prepared to use nuclear weapons to defend any of its territory, accusing the U.S. and its allies of nuclear blackmail and moving to destroy his country. Can somebody find me that speech? I want to remind you that country has various means of destruction. Some components are more modern than those of NATO countries, Putin claimed in a nationally televised address. Still not hearing nuclear weapons. I think a lot of this is propaganda, to be honest. But, hey, are you afraid yet? Biden says you should be afraid that there's going to be nuclear Armageddon. Are you afraid yet? Are you scared? Please be scared. You know who is talking about using nuclear weapons? This guy. So Putin has never expressly said the word nuclear weapon, but this guy right here on the screen, has called for a nuclear strike, a preemptive nuclear strike against Russia. And I will read the subtitles for you, because he says it in his native Ukrainian.
Що повинна робити НАТО?
Actually, I'm going to take the volume down, because I will be reading his subtitles over the top of what he's saying. Let's bring this back up to the top and listen again.
Що повинна робити
What should NATO do to
НАТО?
eliminate the possibility of Russia using nuclear
Унеможливлювати
weapons?
застосування Росією ядерної зброї. Але, що
But what
важливо,
is
я
important,
ще
I
раз
once again appeal to the
звертаюсь
international
до
community, as I did
міжнародної
before
спільноти.
February
Як це було
24th.
до 24-го? Превентивні
We need
удари,
preemptive strikes so that they'll
щоб
know
вони
what will
знали,
happen to
що з
them if
ними
they use
буде,
nukes and not
якщо
the other
вони
way around.
застосують, а не навпаки. Чекати
Don't wait for
ядерних
Russia's nuclear
ударів
strikes and then
Росії,
say, oh,
щоб
since you did
потім
this, take
сказати,
that from
ах ти
us.
так, ну ось тримай від нас. Переглянути
Reconsider the way you apply pressure.
застосування
This is what NATO
свого
should
тиску.
do.
Ось я
Reconsider
вважаю,
the
що
order in which
повинна
it applies
робити
to
НАТО.
apply pressure on Russia.
Переглянути порядок застосування. Що повинна робити?
That man explicitly called for NATO to fire off a nuke at Moscow. A country, by the way, an organization that his country is not aligned with, a country that is not in the EU, in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, called for an organization that he has no formal alliance with to use a nuclear weapon to fight in his war. Here's my big question for this. If you're winning, because we keep hearing that Ukraine is winning this war, why do you want to go throw a nuke at somebody? You're winning, remember? And there's an article again ahead of here that says, "Oh yeah, Ukraine is winning." From the Hill, Zelensky calls for preventative action to deter Russian nuclear strikes. From Julia Mueller. Volodymyr Zelensky on Thursday called for the international community to take preventable action to deter the potential use of nuclear weapons by Russia in the ongoing war in Ukraine. In an address to the Lowy Institute, a nonpartisan international policy think tank in Australia, Zelensky underscored the importance of preventative action, so that Russia could get a better picture of what the potential consequences if they move to use nuclear weapons. They're really not going to give me D-Live today. That's so lame. Preemptive steps are crucial to deterrence, Zelensky said. He cautioned against waiting for the nuclear strikes first. The Ukrainian president's press secretary, Sergei Nikiforov, later clarified Zelensky's comments after some media interpreted the suggestion to include preemptive nuclear strikes. Okay. We read the subtitles, we listened to the Cyrillic. What translation of that was not a call for the preemptive use of nuclear strikes, rather than non-nuclear steps like sanctions? We're already sanctioning them to death. You will never hear such calls from Ukraine, Nikiforov said in a translated Facebook post, asserting that Russia would resort to blackmail the world with nuclear threats. Zelensky has long called upon the international community to take preventative measures to deter Russia from escalating the conflict, which has waged on for more than 7 months. His comments come to the Lowy Institute after Moscow moved to annex parts of occupied Ukraine by holding referenda considered illegitimate by much of the international community. Russian President Vladimir Putin also recently threatened that Russia would not hesitate to use nuclear weapons against what it perceived as a severe threat, further worrying the global community about the stakes of the ongoing war. Ukraine's capital of Kiev is reportedly prepping for a potential nuclear attack on the city, stocking evacuation centers with potassium iodine pills, which can help against radiation absorption. In his address Thursday, Zelensky repeated his concerns about Russian military presence at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the largest in Europe. I like how they came back out, no, he didn't say nuclear strike. No, he completely said nuclear strike. Zelensky to Russia, you've already lost the war. Which I believe we have video of that too. Volodymyr Zelensky has told the Russian military that they've already lost the war in Ukraine. The Ukrainian president spoke directly to Russian forces during his nightly video address on Wednesday. He suggested that Ukraine's victory was assured in part because Russian President Vladimir Putin was failing to adequately sell the war to the people of Russia. Zelensky mocked Russia's increasing use of Iranian-made kamikaze drones, which Ukraine has repeatedly reported shooting down, and said that the introduction of any new weapons would make no difference in the war. Now I will address the occupiers, Zelensky said. Even if you find some other weapon somewhere in the world with same natural name for your Russian world, like these Iranian Shahid, which you are trying to bomb out of cities such as Bila Tserkva, it won't help you anyway. You have already lost. Zelensky said that Russia had lost the war in less than 8 months after the invasion began on February 24th because you have to explain to your society why all this is needed, this war, this false mobilization and self-destruction of all prospects of your people. Well, I don't know. Everybody who's got your back, Zelensky, except for us, because we don't get the majority of our oil from Russia, is looking around and looking at the thermostat and saying, what do I do? I don't think Russia's lost, dude. And I think when Europe comes back and pulls their support back out of you when it starts getting really cold out, that you're going to have a lot of leg to stand on. When people feel that they are right, and when they are on their own land, they themselves know everything, he added. They do not need fanatic lectures on alternative history and political information sessions every day, either at meeting with teachers or at meeting about progress of seasonal harvesting work. Zelensky went on to say Ukrainians know what they are fighting for, while Russians are increasingly realizing that they must die simply because Putin does not want to end the war. He concluded that it was obvious Ukraine would eventually win the war. While Putin claimed to have annexed 4 regions of the Ukraine for Russia last week, the Russian military has recently suffered significant setbacks. A map produced by a pro-Russian Telegram channel on Wednesday indicated that the Ukrainian counteroffensive had recaptured a large amount of territory in the south of Ukraine's Kherson region in only 4 hours on Tuesday. Okay. I want to remind everybody in the international community about something with the Kherson region. According to international norms, this is annexed territory, and it's not just annexed territory in which Putin came in and slammed down the Russian flag and says, "Mother Russia!" This is annexed territory in the fact that they held a referendum, and 99% of the people in the Kherson region said, yes, we would like to be with Russia now. And Zelensky and Biden have yet to show me any evidence that this was not a good vote, that this was a fraudulent vote. I will hear the evidence, if you have it, that this was fraudulent, that the numbers were significantly skewed. Even if the numbers of people who wanted to go and be Russians was under 50%, I'll hear the evidence. But you haven't presented it to me, any of it to me. All you've said is, well, this is illegitimate. It sounds like election denialism, but, we know the Democrats would never do something like that. And I don't think Russia has already lost this war. But with the fact, and this goes along with that, Zelensky says Ukraine has reclaimed dozens of settlements in Kherson since Russian annexation. That means that you're making an offensive into Russian territory at this point. And I want you to think about that for just a moment. A country that was nearly overrun by the JV team, the first wave of the army that Russia put out, is now making an incursion into Russian territory. I don't think that ends well. I don't think that ends well at all. But hey, he's going to be fair. Zelensky pledges fair treatment for Ukrainians in reclaimed territory. This headline here, without even reading the article, tells me that they believe that this vote was real. From Rebecca Falconer. Ukrainian forces are making key counteroffensives gains in southern and eastern Ukraine, including regions Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed to have annexed, according to multiple reports. Russia's lower house of parliament voted Monday to ratify the annexation of Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk. And the upper house was set to follow suit on Tuesday, but Russian forces no longer have full control of any of those regions. Ukraine's military saw its most significant gain in the south since the war began, reclaiming the town of Ducheny and several villages along the key Dnipro River. according to Ukrainian officials and the Russian-installed leader in occupied areas of Kherson province, per Reuters. In the east, Ukrainian forces were advancing towards Luhansk after Russian military retreat from Donetsk region town of Lyman last week, the Washington Post notes. A military leader of Putin's forces in Luhansk said on Monday that Ukraine's military had managed to gain a foothold in the direction of the settlements of Lysychansk. What they're saying, President Zelensky pledged Monday fair treatment for Ukrainians living in Russian-occupied territory, as he noted life is returning wherever the occupiers were driven out. Our approach has always been and remains clear and fair. If a person did not serve the occupiers and did not betray Ukraine, then there is no reason to consider such a person collaborator, Zelensky said in his nightly address. Hundreds of thousands of our people were in temporarily occupied territory. Many helped our military and special services. Many simply tried to survive and waited for return of Ukrainian flag. Yeah, the way that this is worded out here, this kind of sounds like they believe the vote is true. But, well, we'll see. Alright, a little bit of Clown World for you. We'll even be going back to the immigrant side of things. I think we might get through all the new stuff. I don't know if we'll get into any old stuff, but I think we're going to get through all the... No, we're not going to get through all the new stuff. Because we do have live chat to do, and that is the most important part of our Friday show, is to read and say thank you to everybody who chatted in the live chat today, and look through some of your live chats as well today. So if you have something to say on these news stories, don't be shy. Tell us what you think. Harris was involved in a motorcade accident this week, initially described as a mechanical failure. No, this was pretty much incompetence. From Kelly O'Donnell, Kristen Welker, and Zoe Richards. VP Harris was involved in a motorcade accident Monday that was initially reported to Secret Service leaders as a mechanical failure, an agency spokesperson said on Wednesday night. The spokesperson, Anthony Guglielmi, said the accident occurred when the vehicle carrying Harris overcorrected and hit a curb. During a protective movement on Monday, a vehicle in the motorcade had a minor overcorrection and struck a curb. Guglielmi said. The protectee was transferred to a secondary vehicle and the motorcade continued to its destination. There were no injuries to anybody. The Washington Post first reported the incident. Radio traffic surrounding the incident, which was communicated to agency leaders by personnel supporting the motorcade, initially indicated that a mechanical failure had occurred, Guglielmi said. After the protective movement was completed, leadership was verbally updated with additional pertinent facts that the vehicle struck a curb, he said. Arbolt, I love that. A source familiar, no name of course, with the incident told NBC that Harris was headed to work at the White House in her motorcade when the vehicle she was riding in clipped a high curb with its back wheeled and was disabled. How hard did you hit that curb? Now, one thing about the motorcade that you have to understand, that these are not run-of-the-mill vehicles. I can clip a curb in my truck that has regular 8-ply passenger tires on it and drive away, as can most people in the regular passenger vehicles. You can do that in a Cavalier. But the presidential and vice presidential motorcade have special puncture-proof tires. On top of that, they're 10-ply, and on top of that, the majority of the vehicle is armored. So, how hard do you have to hit the curb to be disabled? I don't buy this. The source said that a stopped motorcade is considered a situation of concern, a big no-no for us, and that Harris was quickly moved to the replacement vehicle. Her previous vehicle had been traveling at a high rate of speed, estimated at up to 50 on city streets, the source said. When the motorcade arrived at the White House, the medical office checked Harris out to make sure she was okay, the source added. Harris's press secretary, Kirsten Allen, confirmed the incident on Wednesday. There's something they're not telling us. I can tell you right off the bat, there is something here they're not telling us. So, we'll see. But it's I'm telling you right now, something happened. From WUSA 9, and this is not a review article from before, this is from yesterday. More migrants bust a naval observatory in DC. If you don't want to go to the border, we'll bring the border to you. From Matt Pusatori. Another bus carrying asylum seekers arrived at Vice President Harris's Naval Observatory home in DC Thursday morning. This is at least the fourth bus of migrants dropped off at Harris's residence in recent weeks. This bus arrived from Texas with 38 people, on board. The DC Council passed emergency legislation in September aimed at helping migrants who were being bused here from Texas and Arizona. Since April, buses from Arizona and Texas have been arriving at the nation's capital, but have been dropping off migrants at the transit center at Union Station. I believe that is Metro Central on the Fallout 4 map, which brings it right in front of Pennsylvania Avenue in the White House. Or in Fallout 3, what's left of the White House, because that suffered several direct nuclear hits in the lore. And that was a big glowing hole in the ground. Advocate groups told WUSA 9 that they believe buses will continue dropping asylum seekers outside the vice president's residence. They will be focusing on their efforts on the northwest location so the migrants are not left stranded. Volunteers on the ground say that more needs to be done to help long term, and they aren't convinced that the newly established Office of Migrant Services will do it. The legislation, which created the Office of Migrant Services, allows the mayor $10 million in contingency funds to provide asylum seekers with temporary housing, healthcare, and other services like food and education. But don't worry, it's a sanctuary city. Alright, we gotta skip around a little bit here, because there are a couple more that I want to get done with today. We'll hold off on the gun control law. Here's a fun one for everything going on here. There's a ton of EVs disabled from Ian. Those batteries corrode, fire start. There's a new challenge that our firefighters haven't faced before, at least on this kind of scale. Yeah, a flooded lithium-ion battery is probably not a good situation. And once that lithium starts burning, it's not good. I wonder how many of the EVs around Florida actually have to go through that now. Jimmy Petronas says it takes special training and understanding of EVs to ensure these fires are put out quickly and safely, thanks to the NSFR PIO for their hard work.
My
So we just bypassed the hood latch.
Yep.
waxing wet. Electrical vehicles will continue to burn in the water, which is one of the reasons that you'll see some people will put them in the big Conex boxes full of water in order to keep them wet. So trying to get as much water on this and open it up and cool off the compartment is going to be key right now. It's going to be completely different than it is from your gas.
And another point off this that I think all of us know for sure. Fun fact, batteries do not make electricity. They store electricity produced elsewhere, primarily by coal, uranium, natural gas, power plants, diesel fuel generators. An EV is in no way a zero-emission vehicle. And then somebody trying to come back and say, fun fact, the automobile will never replace the horse-drawn buggy. It will rust and break and run out of fuel. Nothing will ever be better than the God-made horse. Don't even think about the future and mention the sun-charging batteries that charge the EVs. I think that we're going to get to a point where EV is maybe not the standard, but a viable option. I don't think it's a viable option right now. I'm glad that we're doing the technology for it, but I don't think it's a viable option yet at this point. But it's not a zero-emission vehicle. All right, what else do we have? Follow-up from a story that we did yesterday from The Blaze. Google runs pro-LGBT animation on Velma-related search results to celebrate the Scooby-Doo character being made explicitly gay in new movie. I haven't tried this yet, but I'm going to. Why does Google do this when you search for Velma? Let's see. I'm going to try this over on the left window. Yeah, it does. It does it. So if you put Velma Gay in, it doesn't do it, but if we just go back in and pull it back to this and hit the enter button, there you go, it happens live. I was hoping not to have to do that, but we'd be able to see the video of it, but, you know, all they have is stills and screenshots. Google runs pro-LGBT animation on Velma-related search results to celebrate the Scooby-Doo character being made explicitly gay in new movie. From Alex Nitzberg. Google is celebrating the news that Velma, one of the main characters from the widely beloved world of Scooby-Doo, is being explicitly presented as a lesbian in the new movie Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo. Googling words and phrases such as Velma, Velma Dinkley, Scooby Velma, or Scooby-Doo Velma yields the typical search results as well as an animated shower of virtual confetti and two kinds of LGBTQIRAMIGIXTBYITIRIMA271 plus sign minus sign flags that float down from the top of the screen. One of the flags is a lesbian pride flag. Two buttons appear on screen, including one to run the animation again, and another button where people can copy a link to a results page for Velma Dinkley or share the link on Facebook, Twitter, or email. I didn't see that. Oh, yeah, there it is. So you can go back and see that as many times as you want. I don't know why you'd want to see that any more than once, but yes, apparently it works. And I think I will finish with this one. and we will have a Mandalorian moment. We will say, "This is the way." This is from leftover from last week, but I wanted to make sure that we got to it before it fell out of relevance in the news. From the Blaze, former substitute teacher accused of raping a 14-year-old student found dead in jail cell. Yeah, I'm sure it was just a complete freak accident. Right? From Carlos Garcia. A man who was accused of statutory of a 14-year-old that he met as a substitute teacher was found dead in his jail cell. 30-year-old Brandon Holbrook was accused of having sex with a student he met at Bernard Middle School in St. Louis, Missouri. The St. Louis County Police Department had announced his arrest on September 19th. Through the investigation, it was learned that Holbrook engaged in sexual contact with the victim and made veiled threats if the victim disclosed information, police said. According to the court documents, Holbrook was accused of grooming the victims through social media and then having sex with her at her home 3 times. Holbrook was awaiting trial at the St. Louis County Justice Center when he was found unresponsive on Monday in his cell. At about 4 p.m. by a corrections officer, he was transported to a hospital where he was pronounced dead. Holbrook was alone in his cell and under quarantine when he died. Holbrook had met with mental health caseworker earlier in the day and he was fine, Moore added. Police believe that he may have had other victims because he had been a substitute teacher at other schools in the St. Louis area. What they don't tell you is the trauma marks on his head or the strangulation marks around his throat, because those things totally didn't happen and he just laid down and died one day, and we don't have to worry about this anymore. We promise. This is the way. I'm pretty sure that somebody in the commissary paid off a guard for 5 minutes alone with him. I have no problem. I have no way of feeling bad about this at all. I have no problem. I don't even feel bad about celebrating this. This is the way. Alright, and with that, we're going to call it for the day, but before we head out of here, we always go in and check in with the live chat, see what it is that you guys are saying. No, Horatius, they're folks, we're talking about a religion right now that has pedophiles in its churches. You know, the worship of the state and the church of public school. That's a religion that has pedophiles in its churches. Alright, so we'll scroll up to the top and see what you guys have been saying there and see how much we have missed from the top here. Wes Fanning says, Happy Friday. Ron Helton says, you're not on DLive. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with DLive right now. I'll have to go see if I got an email for it, but it's, this is what's telling me. If your channel has been stuck online, please ignore the automated "Your DLive channel has been restricted" email. But it does seem like they're having some sort of problem on the DLive side, which is lame. Arvolt is here with the Twitch stickers. Ron says, glad I decided to load Twitch today, no DLive. Quest says there seems to be issues with DLive. Randy says, good morning. But he doesn't say, oh, yeah, Quest, the problem with DLive is that it sucks. I like DLive. I was monetized immediately on DLive. That's why I like it. Didn't have to jump through a bunch of hoops like I did on Twitch. Alright, let's see what's going on the book. On Monday, we had Ron Helton, Quest Fanning, A Gaines P, Arvolt 24, Horatius, MK Ultra, Randy Crush Saga, and Jopper 9. On Tuesday, gave us Ron Helton, Quest Fanning, Carbs, Jopper 9, Sully, Vampire Hunter D, Randy, Arvolt, and Scarlet Taria came in after we had our issue with losing connection completely on my side. Wednesday, we had Ron Helton, Jopper 9, A Gaines P, Arvolt, Jack the Grim, MK Ultra, Randy, and Harvey McLeod. Yesterday, we had Ron Helton, A Gaines P, Dogbrains, who appears to, I was looking at the chat later on, and it seems that he signed it as MK, so I think that's MK Ultra, is Dogbrains, over on the D-Live side. Jopper 9, Arvolt, Quest Fanning, 80s Kid, Jason, whose name was just Jason, and Horatius. Let's see, Eric says, or Quest rather, says, so because I can't see the previous chat in here, I also couldn't see a good sized chunk of the chat on YouTube. I probably missed a good chunk of the chat. Not that much. A Gaines P is here. Ron says, by about the first or second week in November, we should see some frost. Most of the things have increased by 25% or more. Gas alone is over 100% higher. Ron says, a 5% raise, that's 20 to 25% lower than what you need to make up for inflation. Ron says, I drive a lot less than I used to. Looking to cut that in half. Maybe have to walk to the stores. No, Twitch cutting out was on my side, not Twitch's side. Quest says, I know this is an anathema to government types, but since our money is buying less, it may be time to move the tax brackets and reduce tax rates. Or just eliminate taxes. Gaines, come on, man! I did the thing with weed! Vote Dem this November! Ron says, I have a better idea. The government shouldn't have any constitutional control over what people ingest into their bodies. Arvolt is lurking. Horatius says, because the charges got lowered or dropped if they pled guilty to marijuana and had to do the prison time for it. Yeah, there's probably a bunch of those. Ron says, hell, they put Tommy Chong in prison for selling bungs across state lines. Nobody was harmed by that. What does slave driver Kamala think of this move? I had to wonder, because she liked to use the marijuana convictions a lot. Horatius says people who aren't leftists should question why liberals have been pushing for the legalization of marijuana for over 50 years now. Ron Helton says Kamala's probably worried. She locked a lot of people up for that while she smoked and laughed about it. Some might want revenge. Well, again, it would have to be expunged on a state of California level for most of what she did, because she wasn't a federal prosecutor. She was a state prosecutor. Randy says Biden was just low-key racist to imply most blacks smoke weed. Quest says he may want to king make someone that could actually win an election. Ron says, yeah, why didn't he make the move as soon as he took office? Saved it for the midterms. Biden is a liar and a con man, not to be trusted. Horatius says, while liberals are about to ban nicotine in cigarettes and vapes and also want to tax alcohol, so it's pretty much illegal, they also want to legalize all drugs except for them. Ron says, instead they beat the war drums on day one. Biden's a warmonger. If the U.S. had signed on to being subject to The Hague, then Biden past presidents would be there awaiting their trial for war crimes. Ron says, beer at the store I use raised the price of beer almost $1 a 12-pack. Horatius says, when they drug test blacks in studies, they smoke marijuana at multiple times the rates of others. They lie to those who ask them if they do it in these studies. Randy says, with all the fake source leakers they creamed over during Trump, they want to pretend the leakers are bad now. Horatio says they should go back to their wonderful countries of glorious diversity and not suffer under evil Whitey. Quest says, but Whitey needs to pay the bills. Quest says, when I switch from top chat to live chat on YouTube, I can see Arvolt and Horatius, but not Randy or Ron. But on D-Live, the video has been sporadic. Has it been popping on at all, or? Because it just says sending data over on my monitor. Horatius says you can find more examples of them being criminals and child predators than college grads. Well, that's why I said bring them all in front of a federal judge and individual cases. I don't like blanket in one way or another. Blanket amnesty in one way or another. Hundreds of thousands more Democrat voters to take away your dream of a libertarian utopia, and who will be for discrimination against white children and for taking jobs because of A action. Randy says that's always been the plan. The Dems hold illegals as hostage for their family and friends' votes. Plus, Fanning says 600,000 whites died fighting on the side of the Union, ostensibly to end slavery. This should be sufficient reparations. Ron Helton says, got a felony record. Bye. Horatio says they're illegals, they have to go back, doesn't matter what age they were. Ron Helton says, just think, they're yanking babies out of incubators, more lies from these criminal warmongers. Ron says they're not winning, they're basically occupying areas where there are few, if no, Russian troops. Wait till Russia gets serious. I can't read that one on YouTube. I don't think Horatius about what Russia should do, because I think that might be the banhammer, that one, unfortunately. Ron says Russia's trying to minimize civilian casualties, even though the Ukrainians are shooting from positions that endanger civilians. Ron says allowing the people of that area to vote for their own destiny certainly seems more democratic than what the Soviet Union created this fiction of a country, Ukraine, by adding pieces of other countries to make it. Let Poland, Romania, and Hungary have their territories back as well. I might have to skip that one too, Ron. Something about a necktie that I probably can't say on YouTube or Twitch. Nobody accuses me of being shy. Yeah, no, we can't do that. Quest says, remember Clouseau and his wife? I don't. All Quiet on the Western Front. I've not seen that movie. Arvolt says, that was no accident. Kamala jumped and grabbed the steering wheel from the back seat, shouting, take me to the Capitol. It's believable, right? Arvolt says, I just don't know why the Secret Service lied about a mechanical failure. Something else just sounds off. Harris grabbed the wheel. Arvolt says, maybe we should subpoena the Secret Service text messages about the incident. Oh, wait. She seems to be in shock. Hear that incessant cackling? Quest says, a big glowing hole in the ground would be far more useful for the American people, well, at least less detrimental. Arvolt says, EVs burning are seriously hot. Car melting hot. Ron Helton says, don't worry about the exploding EVs. There will soon be a tax for that, I'm sure. Kind of like how the government turned on vapes. There will not be enough electric grid to charge them, but they will tax you even more. Horatio says, EV is burning up for the environment. The legacy media says so, and they determine reality. Quest says there's something to be said for less direct emissions in densely populated areas, but they do have emissions. Quest says, will it do that for Velveeta too? No, it will not. Gain says, Velma Gay doesn't do it. That's gay. Quest says, those new gay pride flags look like they're for some African country. Arvold says, stop sexualizing children's cartoons. We don't need to know that Fred is bi or Shaggy is a furry either. Horatio says, is Scooby going to identify as female and he and Velma can marry? Apparently Shaggy is a hobosexual. Ron Helton says, what special confetti does Google use when they celebrate a heterosexual? That's why Google has become the sanctuary for idiocracy. Quest says, oh, we're doing the thing I love? Wood chipper sounds. Horatio says, interesting they focus on religions who have pedophiles in their churches, but don't talk about how schools have a much higher percentage. Well, no, that would be a religion with a pedophile in its churches too. Just the state worship religion. Horatio says, I wonder how DLive is staying in business nowadays. Yeah, they don't have advertisements, but they do have a bunch of people who buy lemons. So, I don't know. I actually don't know how it is that they stay afloat. But probably not by not allowing people to stream video on their platform while they're having errors. Quest says the D&D Live is for dilapidated. Now Twitch for me, says Quest. Frost Nixon was a good film. Never seen it. EOR Explorers coming in at the end of the program, which we are going to be powering down in just a moment here because I do have to go to work after this. Says, hello. Is this a YouTube stream? We are streaming live to YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter. What else am I streaming live to? I think that's it. Now we're streaming live to those platforms. We usually stream live to DLive as well, but they're having issues today. And I'm probably going to go back to Trovo too at some point here in the near future and look at some of the other platforms as well. I'm trying to find an audio-only platform for Arvolt, but I haven't found one yet. Like the Totekeki tune. That's probably from a game I haven't played because I don't recognize the name that you put forward. But yeah, we're using Video Game Study Lounge from YouTube. It is a stream-friendly... well, it's a stream-friendly stream, so they don't pop us for copyright. It says so right in the description. But we can't use Radio Cutman because that one is not stream-friendly, and they will pop us for copyright. But I gotta pee, so I think it's time for us to head out of here for the day. Plus, we're done. Yeah, Steven's back on Trovo, though, so I'm going to go back on there just so we have another backup just in case they start to swing the ban hammer on the mainline platforms. But yeah, we're done. Especially if DLive is just going to start having a heart attack. Because I don't want to go without streams. I've already been banned on YouTube twice. Well, not banned, but suspended twice. Alright, so with that, we are heading out of here for the day. Thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. We'll be back here on Monday doing more news, more headlines, and more contemporary, so come back and join us for that. We've got some stuff to come back to that we've got to talk about from the previous day, so look forward to that. Otherwise, we'll be back here. I'll be back here on Saturday, actually, because we're going to be starting a new game on the game stream. We'll be starting Mass Effect. I've got some stuff to do over the weekend as well, so we'll get all of that done. We'll make sure everything looks nice and spiffy and spot on clean, so definitely looking forward to that. Otherwise, come back and join Monday for more contemporary, and we'll also do a game stream on Monday night too. I don't think I have anything going on Monday where I have to be out of the house, so we'll see what happens with that. Otherwise, looking forward to seeing you for more of that. Stick around if you're on the Twitch side. We're going to go for a raid. We'll see if we can find someone who is online and ready to go. Apparently the raid function is working, by the way, because it wasn't working for Uncle Lander. I don't know what's going on with that, but we'll go find somebody to go raid. Maybe it'll be that nice, friendly girl who's probably further to the left of the rest of us that we went to yesterday, because she seemed nice. I liked her. But otherwise, looking forward to more live chat. Again, remember, we only do live chat at the end of Friday's show as far as the news show, so you get your messages in. I do read all your messages, but don't be offended if I don't say anything to you during the stream. But otherwise, we'll see you here next time. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.